In the 80s and 90s, Weird Al Yankovic's song parodies were blasted endlessly on the radio and on MTV, so why don't you hear from him much anymore? The 2014 album Mandatory Fun fulfilled Weird Al Yankovic's multi-LP deal with RCA Records. The album marked his final full-length release, and it may be the last one he ever records. The years-long album production and rollout cycle just doesn't work for Weird Al's creation method. He told the Washington Times, "I think the best way for me to move forward would be to just release things digitally as soon as I come up with them, and that'll keep me a little bit more current and contemporary." Rather than save up material for an album, Yankovic can make music when he feels like it or gets inspired, which he can then release as soon as possible on online music outlets. He told Spin, "I haven't retired from making music. My output in the last 10 years has not been terribly prolific, but I am still putting things out here and there."
You get us laughing and enjoying everything and seeing the satire, but without being mean-spirited at all.
I like to poke people in the ribs instead of kicking them in the butt.
The only projects Weird Al has made available since his last album are 2018's The Hamilton Polka and the more broadly pop-targeted Polkamania in 2024. Weird Al remains best known for his parodies of well-known songs, but he may be ready to retire from that act. He told Rolling Stone, "I'm not so focused on that. If a brilliant idea pops in my head, I guess I do it, but I'm leaving that to other people for the time being." As Weird Al has suggested that he's moving away from writing and recording spoofs of pre-existing works of well-known musicians, he's demonstrated a move toward the straightforward with some of his recent recordings and performances. He's getting out in front of a microphone to earnestly and seriously show off his appreciation for the artists he enjoys via straightforward and faithful cover versions. The long-running Dr. Demento radio show exposed Weird Al to a national audience, and when the host released the Dr. Demento Covered in Punk compilation in 2018, Weird Al recorded a version of the Ramones' Beat on the Brat. Staged in 2014, George Fest was a tribute show to honor the late George Harrison. Yankovic hit the stage to perform one of Harrison's best-known solo hits, 1971's What Is Life? A decade later, Weird Al once again participated in a charity show, performing at the Thundergong Festival. With an assist from Saturday Night Live star Will Forte, he sang Chappell Roan's Hot to Go. Weird Al appeared at the annual Coachella Festival for the first time in 2025 to sing the Muppet song Rainbow Connection, with a cast of the children's show Yo Gabba Gabba.
If my music could, bring some happiness to people, maybe it could help me get over my own sufferings.
Although he hasn't generated much new material in the past couple of decades, Weird Al has remained a road warrior, playing his hits to appreciative crowds. So for the diehard fans who follow him, it's pretty easy to see Weird Al perform live. Following the conclusion of his 2019 Strings Attached tour, Weird Al disappeared from the live concert circuit for nearly 3 years. In late April 2022, he set out on the unfortunate return of the ridiculously self-indulgent, ill-advised Vanity Tour. Over the next 6 months, Weird Al played and traveled exhaustively, performing 129 dates at small to mid-sized venues across the United States. It was so successful that he resumed the tour for another 2 weeks in early 2023. After another break of about 2 years, Weird Al returned to the stage for his Bigger and Weirder 2025 tour. It's Weird Al's most extensive tour to date, with double the size of his usual backing band and a set list promised to include deep cuts and songs that he's never performed live.
It's a comedy music show. It's a high-energy rock and roll show.
Although Weird Al hasn't recorded much new music in the past decade, his live set lists have remained largely consistent, made up of his best-known songs, fan favorites, and minor hit singles. 2 notable exceptions in the Weird Al live canon, however, went into effect in 2019. Eat It and Fat, parodies of Beat It and Bad by Michael Jackson, were retired. The release of the HBO documentary series Leaving Neverland led to a widespread reconsideration of the King of Pop. Weird Al couldn't continue to perform Jackson parodies and celebrate and amplify the musician. He told Billboard, "I don't know if that's going to be permanent or not, but we just felt that with what's happened recently with the HBO documentaries, we didn't want anybody to feel uncomfortable." Also, in the name of sensitivity and changing public perceptions, Weird Al stopped singing lyrical inclusions of a certain M-word used in reference to those who are exceptionally short due to a medical or genetic condition. He explained to Vulture, "It was not a kind word, but it was not a slur. These days, I do not say that word." He added that he once stopped a song mid-performance to deliver a monologue about the necessary evolution of language. For most every major musician who's created a significant body of best-selling award-winning work over many decades, the next move is a biopic. These sweeping epic movies typically tell the life story of a prominent figure, charting their inspirations and rise, and then inevitable fall and comeback, along with all the controversies and mistakes encountered along the way. By the 2020s, Weird Al Yankovic was entering the twilight of his career, and he certainly had the credentials to warrant a biopic, but he decided he wanted to make one of those trope-loaded movies his own way. Weird, the Al Yankovic story is a send-up of musician biopics in much the same way that Yankovic's output parodied the songs of others. Almost nothing in the movie, which starred Daniel Radcliffe as Weird Al, is remotely truthful. For example, Eat It wasn't a massive hit that predated and inspired Michael Jackson's Beat It.
I finally created something of my own, and now people are just gonna think I'm ripping off Michael Jackson.
Additionally, Weird Al also didn't engage in a complicated affair with Madonna, take down drug lord Pablo Escobar, or get shot to death on stage in 1985. Debuting on the Roku channel in 2022, Weird won Yankovic, who produced and co-wrote the project, his first Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Television Movie. Almost immediately after he emerged as a unique musical phenomenon in the early 1980s, Weird Al took his talents to the small screen. Starting in 1984, he hosted a series of 10 autonomous Al TV specials for MTV, and in 1997 he hosted a short-lived zany Saturday morning variety show on CBS called The Weird Al Show. In the 2010s, Weird Al became entrenched in LA's indie comedy scene and appeared in small and supporting roles in many edgy TV projects, including Children's Hospital, Wet Hot American Summer, First Day of Camp, and Tim and Eric Awesome Show Great Job.
Many of us take our bones for granted, but not this man.
The popular Comedy Bang Bang is a partially improvised podcast that serves as a hub for LA comedy scenesters, and Weird Al is a recurring guest on the show. When the show was adapted into a scripted, bizarre parody of a talk show for IFC in 2012, it needed a band leader with comedic instincts. After Reggie Watts and Kid Cudi filled the role, Weird Al took over the job in the show's 5th season. By that time, he had honed his talk show chops as the host of Face to Face with Weird Al Yankovic, an original interview series on YouTube. In 1986, when his record label refused to pay for a clip to promote his extremely dark holiday song Christmas at Ground Zero, Weird Al directed the video himself. Since the early 1990s, he's helmed most of his videos, and after bringing to the screen his vision to match the music of Amish Paradise, Bedrock Anthem, Gump, and more, he began to offer his filmmaking skills to other musicians. Weird Al directed the music videos for acts including Hanson and the Black Crowes. Around 2010, Weird Al nearly made his feature film directing debut. He signed a holding deal with Cartoon Network, and the outlet wanted him to make a live-action movie. He wrote a comedic script for the project, but cameras never rolled. He told Rolling Stone, "We had a deal and everything. We were getting ready to go into pre-production, and the whole thing just fell apart." Weird Al's clean, goofy, approachable, and nice style of comedy has always made his work appealing to children. In recent years, he directly targeted his younger fans when he branched out into making literature with a purpose. In 2011, he published the storybook When I Grow Up. The story of a very imaginative kid named Billy, the book explores all the future career options children can dream about. 2 years later, Weird Al and Billy returned to the kids section of the bookstore with My New Teacher and Me, which concerns a main character learning how to manage personality differences.
Hi, what's your name?
Billy.
Billy what?
Both books followed Weird Al's first entry into instructional content, a 2009 short film called Al's Brain, a 3D journey through the human brain. Premiering as an exhibit at the 2009 Orange County Fair in Southern California, the 11-minute short film, which included 3D animated sequences, took audiences on an educational trip through how the brain works. To be a comedy musician, one must have an expressive voice, and Weird Al certainly does. That voice is also very familiar to millions of people after a 40-plus year career, and it's helped him establish a sideline as a voice actor. While Weird Al has only occasionally performed in live-action narrative comedies, like 1989's UHF, he's been a very prolific performer in animated films and TV series in the 21st century. In addition to popping up on animated shows like Adventure Time and BoJack Horseman, Weird Al has also appeared as himself in animated form. He's done that several times on The Simpsons. From an early age, it was clear that Alfred Matthew Yankovic didn't quite fit the mold. He was a nerdy kid who delighted in comedy, TV, and magazines that showcased an absurd sense of humor. He also had an accordion that his parents bought for him from a traveling salesman.
It's not the Babe Magnet that you think it would be. No.
Yankovic didn't always think that he'd eventually make a living off comedy music. Instead, he studied architecture at California Polytechnic State University, a pursuit he lost interest in after 3 years. Weird Al was initially a derogatory nickname his fellow dorm residents gave him. He had a hard time fitting in with his peers, but he eventually struck up a lifelong friendship with his dorm mate Joel Miller. And his knack for comedic songwriting was clear to Dr. Demento, the DJ he idolized as a teenager. In fact, Weird Al wrote a song about the Yankovic family car that Dr. Demento immediately played on his show. But it was My Bologna, a parody of the Knack's 1979 hit My Sharona, which he recorded inside a restroom, that really kickstarted his career. It was the biggest hit song on Dr. Demento's show, and it also led to Yankovic signing his first ever record contract with Capitol Records. Yankovic's subsequent hits, particularly 1984's Eat It, propelled his rise to stardom as a parodist specializing in wholesome and food-related tunes. This also paved the way for him to co-write and star in the 1989 movie UHF, which lampooned local cable access TV. Unfortunately, a combination of mixed critical reception and strong competition in the form of movies like Batman and Ghostbusters 2 turned it into a commercial failure, although it's since become a cult classic. This resulted in an early 90s career slump for Yankovic. In an attempt to bounce back, he thought about writing a food-based parody of Michael Jackson's Black or White. But the pop superstar refused to grant Yankovic permission, and while this felt like a setback at first, it ultimately became the catalyst for a career revival. At the time, the alternative rock scene was set to explode with the arrival of Nirvana, and Yankovic hit upon the idea of parodying their hit song Smells Like Teen Spirit. When he called frontman Kurt Cobain to ask for permission, Cobain asked what it would be about. When Yankovic told him he'd poke fun at their unintelligible lyrics, Cobain thought it sounded funny and gave him the go-ahead. Smells Like Nirvana ended up earning Yankovic a spot on the top 40, a gold certification for his album, and even a Grammy nomination. One notable thing about Weird Al is that he secures permission from the artist before he parodies. This isn't legally necessary, as parody songs fall under fair use. But Yankovic prefers to have his inspirations in on the joke instead of giving them the impression that he's making fun of them. Unsurprisingly then, he's established a reputation as one of the nicest people in the industry.
I don't necessarily have to legally, but that's one of the reasons I think I've been able to hang around as long as I have, is I don't burn bridges and I want to make sure they're in on the joke.
If you think that the real Weird Al is as rambunctious as his onstage persona, think again. In a 2020 article in the New York Times, his wife Suzanne shared a story about how they almost didn't meet because of this misperception. She was a high-ranking film executive at the time who mistakenly believed that Yankovic didn't have an off switch. But as it turned out, the introverted Yankovic was, and still is, quiet, reserved, and incredibly courteous. He also has a reputation for never losing his temper. Furthermore, he steers clear of drugs and alcohol and never even swears. As he told On Milwaukee, since 1992, he's been sticking to a mostly vegetarian diet, with the occasional cheat meal here and there. So in many ways, he's just a regular, not all that Weird Al. A major personal tragedy befell Al Yankovic on April 9, 2004. At the time, he was touring in support of a new album when his parents Nick and Mary Yankovic passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning inside their home. Al put out an official statement for his fans in which he explained that it resulted from accidentally leaving the flue closed while they were using their fireplace. He also shared that he'd learned the news from his wife before any news agencies could pick up the story. Despite this tragedy, Yankovic decided to continue the tour, though he canceled all of his interview commitments and meet and greets with fans. He felt that since his music had brought so much joy to his listeners, continuing to perform could help him get through this as well. He paid tribute to his parents during one performance with a dedication projected on the screens at the back of the stage. In a 2014 interview with Dan Rather, Yankovic admitted that he'd certainly expected he would outlive his parents, but he didn't think that they would pass away at the same time. He also noted that he continues to feel the pain of the loss years later. Among the handful of artists who have refused Weird Al's parody requests, the most infamous was perhaps the late Prince. During a 2016 appearance on The Howard Stern Show, Yankovic revealed that despite multiple attempts to ask for permission, Prince always refused, without offering any reason. Prince's office once even wrote him to tell him not to make eye contact with a performer during an awards night where they'd be seated near each other.
The only person that's really consistently said no has been Prince.
Another noteworthy instance of an artist refusing to be parodied was Lady Gaga, or so it seemed. In a 2011 blog post, Yankovic shared the story of how he'd reached out to her camp with an idea for a Born This Way parody, the profits of which would be donated to the Human Rights Campaign. At first, Gaga's manager said that she didn't grant her permission. But Yankovic decided to simply upload the song to YouTube so that everyone could enjoy it for free. But as it turned out, Gaga's manager had lied, as he didn't even bother showing her the parody. She in fact actually liked the song, and she quickly gave Yankovic the thumbs up to release a video for it after she assessed it herself. Back in 2003, Weird Al's fans started campaigning for him to get his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. They formed the Weird Al Star Fund, with the aim of collecting enough money to pay for the creation and maintenance of Yankovic's star. When they started, a star only cost $15,000, but by the time Yankovic was inducted, the price had risen to $40,000. Yankovic made it to the list of inductees in 2018, receiving the honor for his accomplishments as a recording artist. According to the Hollywood Walk of Fame's website, he officially became the 2,643rd recipient of a Walk of Fame star. At his induction ceremony, he demonstrated his signature humor as he begged spectators, "I'm sorry I even have to say this. I don't want to even have to ask this, but please don't pickaxe my star, okay guys? I know it's all the rage these days, but that's not cool. Just please don't do that." Earlier that year, Donald Trump's star had been vandalized by a man carrying a pickaxe and a guitar case. In classic Weird Al fashion, though, Yankovic clarified that spitting and urinating were fair game. Though the general public may not have heard much from Weird Al recently, there's still a good chance that they've heard his voice in some capacity. As his official website notes, he's appeared on, quote, a huge number of podcasts. But what's especially interesting as far as this particular medium is concerned is the sheer number of podcasts dedicated entirely to discussing all things Weird Al. There's a weekly show called Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, which has released hundreds of episodes worth of interviews and discussions about the singer's life. There's also the We're All Yankovic podcast, which discussed every single Weird Al song one episode at a time. The Weird Alphabet did the same thing, but in alphabetical order. And then there's the Beard Al Yankovic, which is hosted by two millennial siblings who are passionate about two things: Weird Al songs and beer. And it's not just podcasts that are devoted to Weird Al. 2020 saw the release of no less than 3 books all about him: Nathan Rabin's The Weird Accordion to Al, Lily Hirsch's Weird Al Seriously, and John Bermuda Swartz's Black and White and Weird All Over. Yankovic promoted each of the books with his signature dry wit during an interview with Rolling Stone as he declared, "I don't know how to describe it, but I just felt a real personal connection with all of them." Weird Al has worked on a few other special projects over the last few years. For one thing, he narrated Tiny Tim, King for a Day, a documentary about the famous American ukulele player that was released in April 2021. Yankovic greatly admired the musician, and he read out his letters and passages from his diary for the film.
Oh, this guy is very weird. He's a very strange man.
Yankovic also appeared as a talking head in another 2021 music documentary, The Sparks Brothers, which is about the quirky pop-rock duo Sparks and was directed by Edgar Wright. While his parodying songwriting days may be over, that doesn't mean you've seen the end of Weird Al. This artist is a performer to his core. As he described himself in a 2012 Forbes interview, "I just do what I do, and thankfully people haven't gotten completely sick of me yet."
Ooh! Ah! Ooh! Ah! Soup's on.